like I said, just try to give back and be there for other people. And like you said, faith is a big part of that. You know, I know without God, I wouldn't be here. So, you know.
That's awesome. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, joining us today at the table is Michael Thomas, Director of Business Relationships with Express here in Springfield and Sangamon County. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
excited to join you guys.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I know you and I have talked a couple times about having you on, and at both Express and SILSA, the Customer Service Association, that I know you do a great job helping lead that organization. But you have an incredible story.
Yeah.
And at least in my experience, I've always been unafraid to share it because, you know, it helps other people. And so for a while, you've been on our list, and we said, hey, let's do it. So thank you for being here and your willingness to do it. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do day to day.
Sure,
right?
yeah. So we work with companies to help them find people when they need people. And, of course, we help applicants, job seekers go to work across several different industries. Very fortunate working with Jim Britton and Carol Britton.
Yeah,
they started
great
people.
Family,
Yeah, now their boys are running the business, and Kayla Edwards, of course, and 40 years in this market, you know, over 40 years. So good footprint, good reputation, and just really good, noble work, you know, helping people in their time of need, whether it's a company or individuals looking to go to work.
Yeah, cool. How long have you been with Express?
It'll be 8 years in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and we were talking earlier. I mean, it's just a challenge, right, to find people. And I assume, I mean, it seems like every small business has that issue. And I know I asked you, I said, when's that all going away? And then you didn't really give me a favorable answer.
I don't know the answer. Yeah, it's interesting, Brad.
Yeah.
No matter your industry or sector you're in, you're feeling some type of challenges right now. Whether it's your best people aging out of the workforce, or that that younger generation just looking at work differently. So the challenges are plenty for sure.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and I know, again, not to belabor the point, but it's like, okay, will it ever go away, right?
What's the secret sauce?
And it really started like during COVID, right?
Yeah.
And that changed the behavior of a lot of people because they were able to work from home and the whole deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of them are just jaded. You know, we hit on it earlier a little bit. They were making more money not working. And now we're asking them to come to work. And, most industries are having to do more with less hands now.
Yeah.
So now you're asking them to work maybe twice as hard as they were before COVID for, less money than they were making sitting out of the workforce. So, it's an interesting time for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, you guys, we've certainly had been very fortunate to work with you guys in helping us find some key people for Peerless. That's for sure. So we
and your work with SILSA too. I mean, you guys have had some great speakers there. Over the years. I'm glad we joined that organization. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, great organization. It's our 10th year this year. You know, Chris is on our advisory board now.
And what's it stand for?
Central Illinois Customer Service Association. Yep. So a few local professionals got together 10 years ago and thought about, does Sangamon County, does Springfield need an organization like this? And if so, could it happen, right? What would that look like? And just really brainstorming. And, the rest is history. Now we do 6 or 8 events a year, educational programs, networking opportunities, bring in national keynote speakers, which is, what I really think sets us apart from some other groups. And we're just really focused on customer service. We have the belief that if we all start to do better for people that we serve, our customers, people will want to be here longer, spend more money, stay longer. It benefits everyone, right?
Absolutely.
So the competition kind of goes to the wayside when we bring people together because it's really frontline to executives in the same room, sharing best practices, and it's really neat. It's a neat organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what makes it so unique is the singular focus on customer service.
Sure.
Right.
And I remember some of those questions, when the organization started, do we need another organization in the community? But so many organizations, community organizations of different shapes, sizes, and forms, are doing a number of different things, all good things. But to have an organization, and I'd be the first one, I've had this conversation with various people that wondered at the time, I was like, is there a spot for that? But I think as I've spent more time being involved, the unique focus that's all about customer service.
That's it.
Is what makes it, stand apart from other kinds of organizations, and it has its own unique mission. that's good for the community and certainly good for our businesses.
Well, like that cherry on top, the book that we got.
Yeah,
I forget that guy's
Steve Gillian.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah. So we bought that book and implemented it, or at least partially have.
We
break
start
this
back
summer,
up next week.
But and it's. I mean, I think it's had a really a strong impact on our company, and I think we have anywhere from 10 to 12 people that are in there. We talk about it in the different, whatever the chapters are that we're talking about. I think it's been good for our organization, the culture for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things we drive home as we're vetting these national keynote speakers. We let them know our members want takeaways, right? Like they're not just coming for inspiration. They want action items, takeaways that they can go back and implement with their teams. And, that can be a tedious process sometimes. We've met some phenomenal speakers that just aren't right for Springfield.
Sure.
Just aren't right for our group. But yeah, we've been very fortunate working with the Capital City Speakers Bureau. They're our partner for the most part, bringing in these speakers. And Jack Stallman, he'll be back again on October 7th. And just a great group of people.
That's great.
It's interesting, last thing on that, you mentioned Steve in his book. So we ordered, 15 or 20 of them for some of our team. And within 7 to 10 days after receiving the books, I had a personal handwritten note from him in the mail.
See, that's special.
Thanking us.
Yeah.
That's customer service.
Yeah.
That's how you treat people, right?
He practices what he preaches.
So anyway, I found
that reinforced you guys want to read the book now, right?
Absolutely.
He doesn't just talk about it, he
Right.
does it. Yeah, for sure.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So prior to your time at Express, I know we're all over the place. Express, Silsa.
Yeah, that's
you
all right.
were.
I was with a cell phone store, a franchise group called, it was a Sprint franchise, but the company name was Wireless Revolution. So I was with them just about 7 years and, loved it. Retail's retail, right? I always joke, I think everyone should at least have to work a year in retail.
Yeah.
You learn so much, and I was at a point where I was working a lot of hours and had an opportunity to advance, but it was going to be more time away from home, more time on the road. And my mentor, Tom Hardy, actually knows Jim. Him and Jim are friends, lifelong friends. And he said, go talk to Jim at Express. And, that was almost 8 years ago. So they kept me around.
That's cool. And your time prior to that was when you were with the Salvation Army. So tell us your story. Wherever you start where you want to start.
So just to hit on the Salvation Army a little bit, I came to Springfield with nothing. Prior to that, I was involved with drugs and alcohol quite a bit. I'm from Southern Illinois, a small town, and just grew up quick. My parents divorced when I was young, and I got into the streets pretty early on and started getting in trouble. So in and out of jail and rehab, and that went on and on and on. A lot of ups and downs, and just not a lot of structure in my life, nor did I have a lot of hope and ambition, if I'm being honest. You know, drugs and alcohol seem to zap that out of you really fast. And so I found myself incarcerated for the 5th time.
Man, is that right?
And I was only out for 2 months prior to this time incarcerated. So as you can imagine, I'm humiliated, I'm hopeless, and not really sure what my future is going to look like. And, I had said some foxhole prayers up to that point, but never really anything sincere. And this time I was in Hillsboro, actually not far from here, and I just said, God, if you're real, show me you're real. And nothing happened right away, but things started to happen. And I got moved to a new housing unit and started going to church in there and attending some 12-step groups and, started having a hunger and a desire to read the Bible and ask questions. And I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I was starting to have some hope. And it was interesting because nothing really changed with my situation. I'm in prison, right? There's not a lot to be excited about in prison. But I was beginning to look at life a little bit differently. Got into schooling, got my GED, started going to college a little bit, and time to get out, And I knew that going home probably wasn't the right idea because I had done that a handful of times, Always getting out of places with great intentions and motives, but never really having a plan, never really having a course of action. So I met with the chaplain in Department of Corrections and kind of shared my heart with her. Like, I don't want to go back to Centralia, really looking to do something different. And she told me about a discipleship program here in Springfield was a faith-based program. It's no longer around, but so I paroled here to Springfield. Didn't know anyone. Didn't have a driver's license.
Did you have like any money resources?
No, nothing besides this house. Right, this house. Come to find out, there was 10 or 12 churches that sewed into this house that partnered with this house. So very structured. Every night we had Bible study, or we were going to volunteer somewhere. So they were keeping us busy at the very least. But part of that is they want you to get self-sufficient. They want you to find work. So if you're not working, you're out looking for work. That becomes your job.
Are there any other organizations that in Springfield that are like that now?
Yeah, Springfield's very fortunate in the recovery aspect. I don't know of any faith-based per se, but there's a lot of halfway houses. Fifth Street Renaissance is a program that they do a lot of good things in the community, and they have, I'm guessing, 4 or 5 houses, both men and women. And there's some other ones. There's some that are independently owned. There's a gentleman named Mike that has the Titus House, so men and women houses. And then there's another group called the Oxford, and I bet they have 10 or 12 houses in town now.
Oh, wow.
So they're recovery based. Ideally, those houses are men and women that are coming out of like Gateway or Family Guidance Center or drug and alcohol program.
Out of rehab programs, not necessarily out of
prison.
From prison.
Correct. Yeah. So I get to this house, and I'm kind of on fire for the Lord, trying to do things right. Fearful because I don't know anyone here.
Right.
So
how many years ago? Sorry, I didn't
almost 15 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah, almost about 15 years. So I'm literally going door to door, business to business, applying. Because back then, it's still paper applications.
Right.
Right. And as you can imagine, I'm not very attractive on paper. I got 6 felony convictions, been to prison 5 times. No skill or work history really to talk about anyways. And I was really getting discouraged. I'm like, God, you brought me here. I felt like you brought me here. Like, what's the plan?
Yeah, where are we going?
And just about the time I was pretty much at my wit's end, thank God for that house because it really kept me grounded, kept me plugged in, kept me surrounded with some good people that, at least were able to support me a little bit in the meantime. So it was about almost 2 months of really trying to find work. And of course, I didn't know about a business like Express back then, But so the Salvation Army, I show up at their place and fill out an application, and they gave me an interview, and I started as an entry-level warehouse worker, accepting donations, minimum wage, and I was over the moon excited about that opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that was your first, they gave you your first opportunity.
They did, yeah.
And then tell us about, what you did with it.
Yeah, so 6 months into that job, I got promoted to production supervisor. At that time, the Adult Rehabilitation Center was here in Springfield on 11th and Jefferson. And the Salvation Army had a much bigger footprint than they do now. At that time, we were supplying product, clothes, and the stuff to 5 different stores. Two here, 2 in Peoria, and 1 in Litchfield. So in 6 months, I was now responsible for that operation and about 60 employees, and really had no idea what I was doing. I was literally learning on the job, but I tell you, it was a blessing. I had to really ask for help a lot. I had a great director of operations at that time, and my mentor, and this faith-based house that I was in really helped me, stay on that path, really grow up, Looking back, like that was part of my problem most of my life. I just didn't want to grow up. I tried to keep that party life going and whatnot, and I suffered greatly for it. And, obviously my loved ones and people that cared about me, they're like, what is wrong with this guy?
Sure.
He just keeps going in and out. And, life's much different today than what it was back then.
Yeah. So. That's terrific.
Yeah, what an awesome story, where you're at today.
Did you have somebody, an inspiration, or was it the Bible? And did you have somebody, a mentor that kind of walked you?
In prison, Chaplain Wiseman, she's deceased now, but she just really had a way with, she knew guys that, she had worked for the prison system for 20-something years, so she didn't cut many punches, and she would call you out and, challenge you, right? Yeah. And what are you reading? What are you praying about? And those kinds of things. So that was very instrumental and helpful during that time. And then coming into that house, so many good men and good examples. Part of that program, in addition to finding work, they really wanted you to get embedded into a church. So for a little while, you got to kind of shop around and go visit different churches and get involved. But their goal was to get you connected with the home church and really start to serve there and do that. So I went to Calvary for a time in Cokie Mill and really found my roots at a church called Word and Spirit it's on the north side of town now, over in Grandview. But yeah, the design of that house, when I think about structure, it was just so good. The people that were connected with that place and the programs that they had, it was just all around helping guys really get more connected to God.
Sure.
And then ultimately start to give back to their community and become a productive member of society.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I also think it's just really cool that you're willing to share your story. I think a lot of people wouldn't. So it's going to be beneficial for other folks, right? At least I suspect that's why you shared.
I tell you, anytime I do, it's not always easy or comfortable to kind of relive some of that stuff. But anytime I do, to your point, I hear from someone, right, and they reach out and they have a loved one or a friend or a family member that, is going through something similar. And, if I can share a little bit of hope and a little bit of my experience and strength, I'm always happy to do that. So.
Yeah. What would you say was the, like the catalyst, the real turning point for you where you said, okay, this is it?
Yeah. Yeah. I always, it took me a while to get really honest about what the drugs and alcohol were doing to my life, right? I was never successful. It was never have one or two and then go home. It was always, 3 or 4 day benders and those kinds of things. So it took me a lot of years of not being honest about that. So once I started getting honest about that, it really helped open up some possibilities for me. I think individually, God does as much for us as we allow him to, right? And all my life, I kind of just tried to live my own way, right? I didn't want to ask for help. I didn't want to admit when I was wrong. So with that lifestyle and that mindset, you're not bringing anything good into your life. You're attracting a lot of negativity. So I always found myself in these places like, man, I don't belong here. But sure, my actions and lifestyle wasn't reflecting that I didn't belong there, right? So the catalyst was, I had paroled to my grandparents' house with the hard, firm resolve that things were going to be different this time. And I had I had sworn off the drugs. I said, I'm not going to do any drugs this time. And I wasn't at the point in my life where I thought alcohol was going to cause me that much grief. So I stayed dry for about 8 days and got invited to a party. And I started drinking. And within 2 months, I was back in the penitentiary. So that was that moment where I'm like, man, not only are drugs wrecking my life, alcohol is wrecking my life. And, it's only been 2 months. Like to the point where when I got back to the penitentiary, some of the guys that I had done time with, they thought I had went to segregation. I went all the way home, and I'm back on a new case and a violation. So that level of hopelessness and humiliation, I'm like, holy crap, like this is not, when I was younger, it was almost a badge of honor. I had some street cred, right? I had built this image and this facade of who I wanted people to believe I was, and that guy no longer was cool anymore. Right? I'm 20 something years old, and I don't have anything to show for my life, And like I said, all my family are, they're just like, what's going on? Like they tried to help me and tried to be there for me, and I just would never accept the help. So I think it takes what it takes for each individual. If you're around any kind of recovery community or anything, you hear people talk about bottoms. I think everybody's bottom's a little different. And I think it can get lower, if you're not careful. That bottom could be death, and it is for a lot of people. I was just one of the fortunate ones that asked for help, and I got it. So
well, you come off very, very humble and full of humility.
Well, thank you.
And I remember the first time I met you, and I didn't know anything about you other than you had a really positive energy, $1 million smile, and you interviewed us for, I think it was Silsa, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
Hotel
out at Spring Hill Suites.
And, and you said, he's got a, and he's got a background, and you wouldn't believe it, but I don't know what it is you said, but he's had some run-ins with the law and stuff like that. I'm like, there's no way that guy,
That guy.
No, not that guy, And then I think you made a post on social media. It was your mugshot, and I was like, holy cow, yeah. So your story is pretty inspirational.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's like I said, it's much different today than what it was back then. I was just so hopeless. I just didn't think there was a way out of that.
Yeah.
And when you're living in that lifestyle and you've done the same thing for so long, it's almost hard to see past that. I just couldn't see any hope. And I knew that I had tried a lot of different ways to fix myself. and I had never really given God a fair shot. Some foxhole prayers. Get me out of this one, and I won't do that again.
Right.
But,
Make a deal with him. I've had a few of those over the years.
Bargain with the big man.
Right.
But this time,
Sounds like a book.
Yeah.
With the big guy.
Yeah, with the big guy.
but this
That's
time,
funny.
it was just, hey, no strings attached. You know,
Yeah.
if you're out there, like, I could really use some help right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think he made a way for me. So
Yeah, and then your willingness and
100%.
motivation to do your part. Like you said, you can ask for all the help you want, but until you're willing, right? I mean, I know we were talking before we got on, turned on the cameras. Until people are willing to have, I think you used the word structure and discipline. And I was going to say, what do you think have been the keys for you? Obviously, your faith has played a critical part.
Yeah.
The day-to-day things that you added to your life that made a difference.
Yeah.
That you weren't doing before, if that's a fair way of
great
asking
question.
it.
Well, and I think if I could just hit on what you said before, I know I was guilty of this going in and out of rehab. I expected like roll out the red carpets and let the balloons come out for me. It was hard. I was so self-absorbed and selfish. Like I couldn't see the harm and hurt I was causing other people for a long time. Right. Yeah. I think that's what drugs and alcohol do to you is it just makes you, you're almost in survival mode, self-preservation, because you're so worried about that next fix or that next drink that I don't see the wreckage that I'm leaving behind. I don't see everyone's life that I'm coming in contact with and how I'm affecting them in a negative way. Yeah. So, you go to rehab, you get cleaned up for a little bit, you come out, you almost want people like, rah. Well, they're hurting. They don't trust you.
That's right.
So I think that's a kind of a shock for people that are beginning their journey. I know it was for me. Fortunately or unfortunately, I had to get to a place where, I had burnt all my bridges. There was no more lies to tell. There was no one else left to manipulate. I share this often in recovery settings. Like I was out of moves.
Yeah.
I was out of moves. There was no more.
Left.
Yeah. In and out of prison.
Yeah.
I'm either going to die here and make a career out of this, or I'm going to try something different. And
how bad was prison?
It was pretty bad, especially early on. The first couple of times I'm young, I'm 18 years old, and it's dark. There's people there that are clearly not okay mentally, and it's rough. You kind of just learn to mind your own business and, stay out of the drama. And, looking back, I didn't know it at the time, but I think God protected me through all that too, because I didn't have I didn't get stabbed or any of that scary stories you hear. But a lot of time to think, a lot of time to reflect. And when you're living that kind of lifestyle, it's almost just like purgatory, if there is such a thing, right? You're now the drugs and alcohol are gone. So now you're sober.
Right.
There's, and that shame and guilt. So that was the worst part. It was almost like having a prison inside of a prison, until I started seeking some spirituality and relying on faith a little bit. So, what's different now, I try to model what was modeled to me, trying to help other guys get out of that mess, right? And that seems to be a big help for me to keep it fresh that, I don't ever want to go back to that lifestyle or the way I was. So I have to continue to change. I have to continue to learn and grow. I can't become complacent, I think I was guilty of this myself. You do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's insanity. And I would do that. I thought I would get out of a jam, out of prison or rehab and go back around the same people because they're my friends. Well, what do you think I did? I would fall right back into that same lifestyle. And sometimes I really didn't want to. Right. But I didn't give myself any chance to get out of, doing the same thing with the same people. So now, I'm accountable to some guys. I have a sponsor and a mentor in my life that are much older than me. And, my sponsor has multiple decades of sobriety. So he's been there, done that, so there's not too much that I can't run and bounce off of him. And I stay active in a 12-step program. And like I said, just try to give back and be there for other people. And like you said, faith is a big part of that. I know without God, I wouldn't be here. So,
That's awesome. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
How different is life today than it was when you walked out of prison the last
time?
time?
It's interesting. I still, there's times where, it almost is too good to be true. Sometimes I think I'm dreaming the life I get to live today. I just have a life that I could have wrote down everything I wanted out of life on a piece of paper, and where I'm at up to this point, and life's not even, I haven't arrived or anything, but the blessings I have in my life today would blow that paper out of the water, you know. And it's things like freedom and peace of mind, and you know, I get to be a father and a husband. And,
do you have kids?
I do. How 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my 2 oldest, my son's turning 18 and my daughter just turned 16. So, you know, they got to experience a lot of my absenteeism. You know, I was not an active father. I was not in their lives early on. And so today I get to be, you know, I get to make up for some of that. And, you know, my youngest, she'll be 7, you know, and so she's never seen,
right?
You know,
The other side.
The other guy, right? She's only, by the grace of God, she's only seen this guy. And
that's great.
Yeah, my wife Rachel, we got married in 2018 when I joined Express, so I kind of did all the big stuff in the same year. You know, job change, marriage, we moved into a new house.
Do you ever get back to Centralia?
I do, yeah, and I've had the opportunity to speak at some churches down there, and I'm active in a couple churches down there, and you know, again, just trying to be that light for people that are still in that darkness when I can. You know, it really requires cooperation for people to change. You know, and I didn't realize that. I guess I was naive to it for a lot of years. I just, you know, I expected, you know, if there is a God, I expect him just to come down and, you know, magic wand me, right? But there's so much that goes into change. You know, I don't just wake up one day and everything's different.
Right.
You know, day by day, year by year, things continue to change. And just when I think I got one area of my life under control, I have something else pop up, right? Where, you know, but today I lean into it, right? I enjoy the process. I've learned to appreciate it and respect it. And it's not a chore or burden. It was in the beginning, you know, because in order to be sober and remain sober, I had to change everything. Yeah. You know, I had to come to this weird place that I don't know anyone in Springfield. It's much bigger than my hometown. Sure. And literally learn how to live. And, you know, that's scary. That's strange. That's uncharted territory. But it was what was required for me to have the life I have today. So,
well, good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
Couldn't find work, you know, when I got here. Now I get to help other people find work,
that's
which is really
amazing
cool,
when you think about that. Nobody wanted to,
nobody wanted to hire
entertain
me.
you, and now, that's I had not thought about that.
So then, like when we're calling you and telling you we can't hire guys with felonies, you're probably just shaking your head like,
these
these knuckleheads. There's some good people out there.
I get it, and I don't blame you. You know, it's an interesting dynamic. Some people want to work, but they're not work ready. Right? They have so many barriers and obstacles in their life that they think a job's the answer, but really they probably need to go to rehab, or they, you know, they have so many different obstacles in their life that they couldn't be a good employee even if they wanted to. Yeah. So that's challenging. That's heartbreaking at times because you know, they want to do better. They just don't have the guidance or the opportunity maybe in their life. So the Salvation Army, you know, I serve with them still and have for ever since I was an employee there. You know, now I'm on their board. I've been the chairman, the vice chairman. Now I'm just serving in the fundraising capacity, and you know, they did something. They gave me a shot when no one else would, right? So not that I'm indebted to them, but they just hold such a special place in my heart that I don't ever see myself leaving that organization. You know, I'll serve with them until they don't want me no more. So.
I love it. Well, you're a great example of the fact that loyalty is a two-way street. That's when people get it right.
That's
most
exactly
oftentimes it's a one-way street.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But they were loyal to you when you most needed them, and you're forever grateful and loyal.
Right.
Yeah, well said. Yep.
It's quite the story.
We experience the one-way street loyalty a lot.
But,
you know, one-way streets all the time.
I tell you though, sometimes we do too. You know, we interview
you bend over backwards,
hundreds of people a week, right? And what we try to remember and try to instill in the team is maybe you can't help them today, and I know you guys subscribe to the same kind of mindset. Yeah. Try to leave them better than you found them. And sometimes that's just a word of encouragement or hope. Right. You know, they want a job, but they're not ready for work quite yet. So just leave people better than you found them. You know, try to give them some pointers or some tips or whatnot. And that's what we try to remember at Express.
I like it.
You know, so.
Yeah. And not very complex.
Were you, like you mentioned earlier, that all those years you didn't even recognize in the midst of it the damage kind of left behind? Has there been a lot of time spent with old relationships and rebuilding and if you don't mind? I'm just curious.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes, the answer is yes, and it's still ongoing. You know, especially with my when you're in the midst of that darkness, that drug and alcoholism, and you're in as deep as I was, you just can't see it.
Yeah, you don't
and
even
maybe
know,
you don't want
right?
to see it. I don't know. There's a fine line there, right? All I cared about was myself.
Yeah.
But if you would have asked me, I would have told you I love my kids. My actions sure didn't reflect that I loved my kids. I would have told you I knew God. My actions and my lifestyle sure didn't reflect I knew God. So yeah, that process has been ongoing. But great relationships with most of my family today. That there was a time where they didn't. For their own well-being, they had to cut ties with me.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
The pain and
absolutely.
suffering I was causing them, they had to distance themselves from me. But yeah, today, I have a key to my stepmom's house. I get to be there for my father. My grandfather passed away last year. And there was a time where they didn't want me on their property.
Yeah,
because of the things I had done when I was younger and the lifestyle I was living. And I got to be with him as he was, transitioning. And fast forward over a year, my grandma's getting close now. And I get down there and spend time with her and, just try to make up for lost time. Not that I can, but gosh, I can sure treat them a little bit better today and just be more present and try to give more than I take. And, that's my goal today.
I like it. It's a good way to live life.
Yeah.
You got to ask him the question.
Yeah, it's
though,
a
for
lot
sure.
of, how do you even start
don't even
on
die,
this
no.
one?
We
So-
always ask one question.
All right.
Of the
I'm not
folks we
laughing because
interview.
it's funny. I'm like
I'm like,
overwhelmed with
I
how
am- well, I am
unbelievably
too.
powerful
I
your
am.
story is.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. So we always ask folks if you can look back to your younger self, which you may not even be able to see some of that because you did so much damage.
Yeah,
right?
or maybe you want to go back 12 years or 13, whatever. You pick the time frame.
Yeah, you pick a time, but if you could go,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you could go back and give your younger self some advice based on your life experience, what would that advice be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm torn a little bit, right? Because I would say I want to go back to the first time I was approached with the opportunity to smoke weed or drink alcohol. I wish something would have happened.
Right.
But in the same token, I don't know if I didn't go through everything I went through, if I'd be the person I am today. And what I mean by that is the level of empathy, understanding. I don't know that I could relate with people and I get it. Like when I tell people I get it, like, no, I get it.
yeah.
Sometimes more than I get it, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Depending on how
right.
much I want to divulge. So, if anything, I think it would have been listen more and love better, right? Those are some of the regrets I have, right? Just the way I treated my family when they didn't deserve that.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Very
An
inspirational.
awesome perspective, right?
Yes.
I mean, I've heard various people, but not who have not been where you have on your journey say, I regret a lot of that stuff, but I'm not sure I want to change it because I wouldn't be who I am today. And that's
I can only imagine how many people's lives you've touched with being so open and aware of who you were and who you are now. And so that's inspirational to me for sure.
Yeah, big time.
Because you exude this positive energy that people just want to be around.
Yeah.
Just for the record. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, again, like you said, who would? Nobody would know.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
no.
like when I mentioned just briefly to him that day after our 5-minute little interview, and he's like, "No, you might have the wrong guy."
Yeah. No, seriously. I was like,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's crazy. I thought when I was asking for help and in the midst of my suffering, I thought I wanted that life back. It was no life at all. I was merely existing whenever I was running the streets and, hurt my family and stuff. And I'm so glad I didn't get that life back, because I would never have an opportunity to have the life I have today. God continues to do for me what I can't do for myself. That's for sure.
I love it. Well
Good
said.
stuff. Good
Yeah.
place to finish. Can't be
Yes.
said any better.
Agreed. Thank you
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you guys.
coming in.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.